Kat, thanks for giving up your time to talk to us today. Things are changing pretty rapidly at the moment, and they seem to be the speed's ever increasing, and it's sometimes hard to catch up, as we know. I know you and I have sort of fairly regular catch-ups anyway, and we have done over a number of years. Just generally, I suppose, over the last few years, we have actually been dealing with quite a lot already, business-wise. We've naturally had Brexit that's been in the background for quite a few years now. For the oil industry in particular, we've had the drop in the price of oil we've seen, and what the oil and gas industry has had to do to cope with that. More specifically for Premier Oil, where you work, you've got the recent news about the acquisition, of course, and I know you in particular have been working hard in the background over the past few months on that aspect. And currently, pretty much everything businesses are doing, especially multinational businesses, we're having to think about the impact of the COVID pandemic as well, and how we navigate our way through that. It's certainly a challenging time for all of us. So I don't think the natural resource sector is any different. Now, part of that challenge is just ensuring companies actually sort of continue to plan for the future, I suppose. And that will include attracting new talent, bringing through that younger generation, and just developing the skills that they're going to need, but not just thinking about the skills they need, but what they're actually looking for from their career and what they want to do sort of from a wider perspective and the contribution they want to make. And it's certainly something we as a firm at BDO have been working on. Natural resources is one of the most essential sectors for the development of society. There's literally millions of people employed in the natural resource sector worldwide, and we've seen quite a lot of transformation in a fairly short time frame, I suppose, in what can be in some quarters anyway quite a traditional industry, but obviously with the new sort of ways of developing power, it's quite a transformational and expanding and fast moving industry as well. So what I'd really like to do today, Kat, it'd be great to get your perspective on just what you're doing, what you've seen for getting sort of fit for the future workforce. We've known each other for a number of years, as I've said, but it'd be great just to get sort of an introduction from you.
Thanks, Lee. Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in this interview. So yeah, my name's Kat Manzi. I'm currently Premier's Group Tax Manager. I joined Premier 11 years ago when I was just 25 at the time. Before Premier, I'd spent 3 years in the corporate tax team at Deloitte. My entire career has been spent working in the natural resources sector. I'm based in Aberdeen in Scotland, and it's everybody's connected to the oil and gas industry. It's hard to find someone who isn't. My family all work in the industry. I've grown up with this industry around me in terms of my friends and families and their roles. What attracted to me to the industry, the different types of careers that are available. It's just so wide ranging. The different type that you wouldn't automatically think are available in the oil and gas industry, but it's fully wide ranging. There's such a diverse workforce as well, because you're dealing with people from lots of different countries all over the world, and you really you're working quite closely with them depending on what your role is, and you really get to develop more understanding about how different cultures interact. Another thing that attracted me to the industry is just the travel opportunities. In my role, I've been fortunate enough to have quite a lot of exciting travel opportunities. I've been to Alaska, the Falkland Islands, Indonesia, Vietnam, Pakistan, Singapore, and Mexico. And that's something that's quite common in this industry, and that you do get a lot of travel opportunities. And just as an industry, we've had a lot of challenges, which I think we have a really good track record in terms of overcoming a lot of challenges. We have a long history. We can be very entrepreneurial and innovative in terms of facing these challenges. we can't seem to get through about a 5-year period without there being a significant oil price downturn, which presents loads of challenges in terms of reshaping the business and making it work in a lower oil price, refinancing, finding new ways to progress oil and gas developments. I feel like we are constantly facing a challenge, so it's never dull in our industry, which I think is a good thing. So I think it's quite exciting to work in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you've been in the industry quite a number of years now, and I think as long as I've been working, and we as a firm have been working with Premier Oil, I'm pretty sure you've been at Premier. And you mentioned sort of prior to going into industry, you had a relatively short period, but at Deloitte, wasn't it? You mentioned around 3 years. What did you find sort of different between practice and industry, and what sort of gave you the push or the impetus to think, actually, I want to move out of practice and go and work in industry?
I guess I wasn't actually looking for a role in industry at the time. I really enjoyed working in practice. The people I worked for, the types of things I was getting involved in, I just never seen before. And as I sort of touched on before, there's just things were constantly changing, especially in the world of tax, let alone in our industry. As we know, the tax changes every year. And it's just, I really enjoy that side of things. I just don't ever feel like I get bored in my role. I think I sort of hit 3 years in Deloitte, was around the same time as the sort of the credit crunch and the recession, and there was a very significant oil price drop that took place then. And one of my main clients, as a result, went into administration. And Premier Oil, my current employer, they acquired my client out of administration. So I was seconded to Premier from Deloitte to help them with integrating my client into the organization. I think one of the key differences at Premier, I'd say, is that I have a very, very broad role, or I had a very broad role at Premier at the time I joined. When I joined, I was the UK tax manager, whereas now I'm the group tax manager. And it was very much encouraged just, for me to get involved in all parts of the business. Whatever I was interested in, they were very sort of happy for me to get involved in. Whereas in Deloitte, I was more specialized in just corporation tax. Whereas, Premier cover all taxes. So there was quite a lot of new tax areas that I really hadn't had very much experience in. For example, VAT, employer taxes, and also getting involved much heavily and closely with tax lobbying. In Deloitte, they had very senior people already connected with the tax lobbying groups. And I was quite junior when I was at Deloitte, but when I joined Premier, I got to participate in all of those work groups and meetings, and sort of getting frontline access to, discussing with HMRC and HM Treasury ways in which we can incentivize the oil and gas tax regime in the UK to enable developments to go ahead. And that was just really, really invaluable experience that I gained, and just, really grateful for that opportunity to be able to get involved in things like that, because I really enjoy that side of things. And I wouldn't have been able to get involved in that in Deloitte until, quite some time further down the line, had I stayed there.
I know from working with you, one of the things you really do enjoy, as you say, is getting involved in all those diverse range of issues, not just the corporate tax, not personal tax, no VAT, but thinking across the globe and outside of just tax as well. And definitely, I think, I've always worked in practice, but I definitely see that with people that are in industry, especially have gone from practice to industry, that it does broaden your scope if that's what you're interested in. And you also sort of started mentioning as well when we were talking just a little earlier around, especially in an industry like natural resources, oil and gas, and within Premier, there is such a diverse range of roles. You can think of onshore, offshore. You've got head office based, you've got subsidiary based overseas. You've got where is your head office? Is it UK or somewhere else? Do you think sort of the broad range of issues you can get involved with, plus the broad range of roles that are available, are a really attractive proposition to just so many people that might be looking at this area now and going forwards?
Yeah, I think so. I just think there is, something I found in my role at Premier that, we really encourage people to consider side steps in their career. So, they may come in, join Premier in a certain role, but not to be afraid to think of taking on another role in a totally different department, depending on the skills and experience and roles and responsibilities. But, I've seen that happen a lot. I'm not so much myself. I haven't taken any side steps so far, but I have had discussions about potential side steps into areas like perhaps becoming a non-op asset manager, um, or working for the business development team, or moving out of tax and taking on a finance role. That's very much encouraged in Premier. But I have seen examples where people have done those side steps, and they've moved from one jurisdiction to another as well in order to take those side steps, or do something completely different. And to my knowledge, I think in all of those cases, it's been very successful for that individual and for the company.
I know it was quite a few years ago actually now, and there was something I was working on with the HR team at the time within Premier, but it was looking at sort of a rotational program, almost like a sort of early in career or grad type rotation programs. And as I say, it was a number of years ago. Is it? I don't believe at the moment, I've not seen it anywhere with expats that sort of Premier have that sort of policy. But do you think it's something that may be brought back in or may benefit those that are looking to move into the industry and look to a role with Premier?
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I'm aware that much larger companies do have sort of development plans like that. I think the difficulty with us is that we are a lot smaller and a lot leaner. So with the rotation, I think there's lots of ways in which that would be really beneficial for Premier, because I think given how lean we are, we perhaps have a bit more succession planning exposure, and rotational development could help kind of eliminate some of the risk we have in terms of succession planning gaps. Retraining people in other areas so that, if a key role was, to disappear, then there's somebody available there to step in and take over that role. But yeah, I think our size perhaps limits us a little bit, and we've been hit by multiple downturns in the last 10 years, that it also just makes it, because that's resulted in us being a lot more leaner and making cuts in terms of our organization. That's maybe there just isn't the opportunity to do that, isn't quite affordable for us yet. But I'm not that close to that either, so I'm just giving my own personal view. I've not actually discussed that with our HR team to know what the position is on that.
Yeah, no, understood. At the moment, I know. Again, I work, as I say, quite closely with you, but more with the HR team as well, because of how I work with Premier on the expats. And I know you'll be aware of this, I'm sure anyway. But sort of across Premier over the last couple of years, at least, there has been an even greater focus on sort of the people within the organisation, and like a lot of organisations, really placing a lot of focus on sort of mental health and well-being aspects as well. And it just gives you a broader appeal, as it obviously shouldn't. It's the right thing to do for a business. What have you seen over the last sort of 12, 24 months, the impact that sort of thing has had on maybe the new graduates or early in careers coming through into Premier? Has it been sort of a driving factor for them to come in, or are you not close enough to see whether that's been sort of a factor for them or not?
I'm probably not close enough, but I would say that I think there's been a lot of positive things that have been introduced over the last year or so in relation to the staff development plans, and not just talking about the next 12 months, what their goals and objectives are, but what their plans are more medium and long term. Like, I myself have done one recently to cover the next 10 years, to give me that sort of, it's a really good way to have those kind of conversations with your line managers around where you're looking to go and how you might get there, what development you need in terms of technical development, but also on the soft skills, sort of management leadership side of things. In conjunction with that, we have also introduced things, and you may already know this, Lee, around talent assessment as well, which is kind of linked to your development plans. we are, I think, getting a lot more transparent about our appraisal system, and how we sort of grade each individual's objectives in the year and measure them. We're more transparent about our remuneration and our reward for individuals. We recognise that our workforce are one of our most valuable assets, and I think I certainly think something that's really attractive to me for Premier is the flexibility as well of how you work. I think that's probably COVID has made that kind of happen anyway, but even before COVID, we had very flexible arrangements with regards to your working hours and managing that around, say, if you've got a young family or any family circumstances, working from home. I think that's really important today. I think now having that flexibility and not having to work set 9 to 5 Monday to Friday hours.
Yeah, and I think, I suppose one of the other challenges for a company like Premier is, of course, that you can absolutely introduce that flexibility for maybe your onshore workforce, but your offshore workforce that are obviously going to be in a rotation off, rotation on policy, that they have to still accept that they're going to have to be literally on site to do their job, of course.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. Yeah, sorry, that flexibility isn't quite there yet for the offshore.
It absolutely can't be, can it? Let's be honest. There are still some jobs you have to literally be hands-on to do. Do you think, just thinking about sort of people coming into the profession, but just actually looking to go into sort of natural resources, oil and gas, particularly for Premier, of course. Do you think there's still a lot of, or do you think there is a lot of knowledge around the sector? Do you think that people specifically want to get into that industry? Or do you think it's more something that people generally are falling into because maybe they've got an engineering background for some of the offshore work, or, there is all the usual functions to the head office as well, like HR, finance, etc.?
Yeah, I think that perhaps there's a little bit of misunderstanding or not having sort of a full understanding of the industry in perhaps the younger generation. I'd say those that live around Aberdeen and in Aberdeen, as I mentioned before, it's hard not to be connected to the oil and gas industry up here. I believe the younger generation in and around Aberdeen will have a relatively good understanding if they do have family members involved. But I do think, outside of this area, perhaps the younger generation aren't fully aware of the industry and all the good things that we do. I think from a PR perspective, it's only really ever the bad stuff that gets, put out in the media in terms of oil leaks and, I don't know, Greenpeace demonstrations and impact on climate change, and all the good stuff is never really at the forefront of the media. And there is a lot of good things that we do as an industry. We are actually, in terms of climate change, we are trying to lead the pack in terms of, meeting net zero targets before the government's target of 2050. We're trying to do that by 2040 or 2030. We have set up, a climate change committee in our organisation where this is a priority for us, and we're having to reshape our business to, deal with the energy transition and the future of our organisation, how we can get that to work alongside net zero and renewable energy. So I've maybe got sidetracked, I'm afraid, but I think for younger generations, I think I've got a nephew who's 18, and when he was 16, he was looking for work experience. So I got him a week work experience at Premier and set up meetings and sessions with most, a wide range of departments for him just to speak with the relevant team members and just really understand what they do, how they do it, why they like it, what their background is. And he found that really, really helpful. As a result of that, that helped form his decision as to what he wanted to study at university. And then, just last year, I took him down to London for, a week's work experience with our London head office, just to get more an idea of what the differences is between a head office and like a business unit, an operational site. And that was really, really valuable for him as well. And I think, if younger people can get those kind of experiences at that age when they're making a decision as to what they're going to study at uni, I think that's really, really important. And just give them some sort of, I had no idea what life in an office would have been like until I joined Deloitte. And if I'd had that experience beforehand, perhaps would have been more prepared and more ready for it. And I think having spoken to my nephew, he's, in terms of his objectives, he's looking for job security, but he's also looking for, I guess, a job where he has like a sense of meaning and purpose, and a good work-life balance, which is probably not too dissimilar to what the older generation are looking for.
Our generation, Kat.
Yeah, our generation. But yeah.
I think you make a very good point, to be fair, because I've certainly seen it as well. We all want to be greener. We all, absolutely are aware of we need to be, all of us, much better in terms of protecting, looking after the environment and the world that we live in. But I see it even more with what I call the younger generation. That really is a massive focus for them. And you're right. It's great that you can say, yeah, of course, you Premier and all businesses in the natural resource sector, that they're trying to be as green as possible. They're trying to lead the way in some ways, actually, because they realise they've got to do it. You realise you've got to do it, and that's going to be a massive tick, I think, for the younger generation, because that is a huge driving force for them. And I suppose one of the things we can sort of think about is it's not just what we can do for them, of course, is what the industry can do for them. They've got the chance to really step into that industry and shape it and build the future of it, I suppose, as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I agree. And I think they can come in with fresh perspectives, and really, if they could be really valuable to us if they're prepared and not afraid to just challenge what we're doing, why are we doing this, and thinking of like the longer term implications, and the impact on society, and just perhaps new ways of doing things that we haven't thought of.
Yeah, and I think we've certainly seen. I mean, I've worked with companies within sort of the natural resource sector for pretty much the whole of my sort of career in practice. That's 22 odd years now. And although I've said right near the start, it's obviously quite a traditional industry, actually, things have moved really quickly, and there's been a lot of change. There's had to have been a lot of change and flexibility, and we're seeing that increase, and it's getting more rapid. And I think that we're also finding that younger generation really can help bring about that change and can give you a whole set of ideas that we never even thought of, I suppose.
I definitely see also, I guess, I'm seeing it so much more now in terms of tax technology. So I definitely think there's going to be an increasing demand for sort of technology-based skill sets, because I can see tax technology playing a bigger and bigger part in how we manage our tax affairs. And it's advancing significantly, and there's it's going to, over time, I think, replace a lot of what we already do, and having skill sets where they can manage that technology, manage the data, have valuable software skills, and understand how things are going to be mapped and what implementation issues there might be. That's all going to be really, really valuable as we move closer towards automating a lot of our existing tax processes.
Can you think, just I suppose, sort of touching on that piece about technology, because it's something we're all having to deal with, and yeah, absolutely, technology is driving partly the way we all work now. Can you think of anything, sort of partly with the technology and more broadly, anything where there's roles in the industry now that you wouldn't have seen 5 years ago, and there's jobs available for people that wouldn't even think that they have that type of role available to them? in oil and gas, in natural resources?
Actually, I'm not aware. I guess I assume that there are some, perhaps in like, our IT team has grown massively over the time I've been with Premier. So I think there's probably a lot of technology-based roles that have been newly created over the course of the last 10 years. I am aware of one new role that I've been working with, and that's like a climate change consultant. So it's just kind of similar to what I was just talking about earlier about how, we've established a climate change committee, how seriously we take, our response to climate change, that we have recruited a specific role to help us manage that transition. I don't think I've seen any new roles created in tax yet. But I think that perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, I could see roles in tax being created around just managing tax technology, being very specialized sort of technology-based tax roles, perhaps with no requirement to have underlying tax qualifications.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose thinking more broadly as well around sort of maybe what roles might be done a little differently. You might see some of the offshore roles actually move onshore, where the work's done remotely, of course, I'd imagine.
We have actually seen some of that to some extent in Premier. Actually, there are quite a few roles actually now that can be performed onshore, and actually can be performed onshore via technology rather than people.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but again, it feeds into that technology piece, of course. Technology is becoming more and more of a factor in a number of roles, not just within natural resources. In terms of sort of what you're seeing at the moment, maybe you're not close enough again to that part of the business, of course, but I'll ask the question. In terms of what you're seeing with applications coming into Premier and the numbers of people wanting roles with it at Premier and therefore generally within the industry, has that increased? Are you seeing more applications come through? And if so, is there any sort of specific roles that people are looking for?
I don't think I'm close enough to be able to answer that question very well. I'd note on the tax side, we have tried to recruit, in-house tax resource last year, and now at the moment we're currently recruiting for maternity cover this year, and it's a really challenging market. We received 2 CVs 4 times, and they don't tick all the boxes in terms of the skills and experience we're looking for, and I think there's a bit of a gap there in the market, or it's that given the current state of the macro environment, nobody's looking to move jobs at the moment, or there's just too much uncertainty in terms of Premier's future with the merger. There's perhaps quite a number of factors that's affecting that, but I mentioned, we were recruiting last year and we weren't in the position we're in just now last year. And, we still had, just very little interest in the role.
You mentioned the merger, and obviously the understanding is that'll all be, or at least the sort of the regulatory requirements will all be completed by, I think, March 21, isn't it? End of March 21. And that's going to give Premier and then obviously the larger group, Chris, or a much larger or a much broader chance rather of actually looking at some of the things that Premier were trying to achieve pre-merger and actually being able to achieve those things. And would you say that may well see an increase in terms of the numbers of people you may need in certain areas of the business, and maybe even in certain areas geographically as well?
I'm really not sure, I'm afraid, Lee. I don't yet have the clarity on, the combined organisation and how we're going to be structured. And I'm not sure if I'll be party to those conversations. But so I don't know at this stage, but I think it is, the merger is exciting in terms of the future opportunities for the legacy Premier assets, particularly the overseas ones that, have been hindered, I guess, by our existing financing position in our balance sheet. So, if some of our overseas opportunities get the green light, then there will need to be an exercise where we need to man up those projects. So I would expect that there would need to be, external recruitment for those. That I wouldn't have thought that we'd have sufficient in-house numbers to be able to manage those. I'm talking about Brazil, Mexico, and the Falkland Islands.
Yeah, and just thinking about possibly, let's say possibly people you may recruit at some point in the future for those specific projects, or more broadly, what sort of advice would you give, or what sort of advice I suppose would you give in terms of people looking to come into the industry and the opportunities it gives them? I know you've probably covered this in some detail already.
Don't be afraid of a challenge. Definitely not. One of the best things about working for Premier is the people that we work with. We've got a great team of like-minded people who are just, innovative and really creative in terms of, there's a challenge here, but it's not going to stop us trying to achieve what we need to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, not, as I said, I'm not within the industry, but I've worked with the industry for many years. I can definitely say that there seems to be, there is so much opportunity and potential for so many different roles in the industry. I think pretty much anyone could find a role within the industry that would suit them. I think it's that sort of industry that's got such a broad appeal if you actually really looked at what the offering was.
Yeah,
I
completely agree.
And I think, I mean, us working together, I know I've seen with you and how you've sort of faced those challenges over the 8 years at Premier, odd at least, that you're still really enjoying it. I know you are.
I do love my job.
Yes, I know. That's one thing I do know about you, Kat, is you definitely do genuinely love your job, which is good to see. We should love our jobs because we spend a lot of time doing it, so we should enjoy what we do.
You definitely need to find passion in your role. It helps you get through the tough times.
I suppose that could be another piece of advice. There are always tough times, right? Doesn't matter who you are and what role you're carrying out.
But there's people to help as well. So don't be afraid of a challenge. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. There's support and help there within the organisation. You just need to ask.
Kat, it's been really great catching up with you as always. I know I said at the top we get a chance every now and then to catch up anyway, but it's really good to get your thoughts and get some time with you. Really appreciate it. I know from working with you and the organisation over the last 8 years, it is a great business. I really enjoy working with you individually and as a business, and I think there's some really great opportunities there for people, especially even more merger, of course. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated.
You're very welcome, Lee. Thank you.